in this time now that we have reserved for the Dharma talk, we're going to talk a bit about the Dharma. So, why are we doing this? Where it's coming from? It's kind of been the very traditional and ancient way to pass on knowledge, to just speak about things, which I guess is very obvious, but yeah, I think in general we got very used to having our information from books, from videos, from online, from whatever, but it can be as simple as that, just like listening to someone. And this is actually how like all the big traditions and the religions and everything really started, and also Buddhism started like this, with the Buddha just going around, and whenever he felt like sharing his insights, he did so, and therefore passed on his knowledge to the population. And eventually, as it goes, society evolves and actually can write it down and hold on to it and spread it more efficiently. But yeah, the most easiest form is the spoken word, and that's why we also want to include that in these teachings, because the main focus, I guess, here is on the practice and on experiencing yourself. But it's really nice to also here and there get a bit of an input on what are certain teachings about, maybe about technique, maybe about just like personal insights, or actually what was written down. So Dharma talk can be in various different directions. So it's for you to give you a bit of insight and a bit of information, a bit of inspiration maybe for your own practice, and then also for your own wisdom. So what I'm passing on is my personal wisdom mixed with knowledge, and you receive it as knowledge. And for you to really understand it and really feel it, you have to either have experienced it yourself already, or it will happen at some point. And this is kind of what the practice is all about, to for some part also get input and get like the technique and get some knowledge, but then practicing yourself and actually turn it into wisdom and into experience for yourself. This is also a really nice exercise in mindfulness, because mindfulness never stops, and also not in the Dharma talk. So you can practice mindful listening here, which basically just means giving attention, and means also watching your whole process as you're listening, because usually when we do so, there's a lot going on there with like immediate reactions, some judgments, some expectations, some like resistance, some joy. So all of this is absolutely okay taking place, and I just want you to notice and observe what is taking place within you. And we also will be recording this, not to spread it around, but just for you guys to maybe have it at some point if you're looking back to this in 3 years and want to know what Anna talked about, then you can. And also to like take away this pressure of like, oh, I have to remember, I have to write down, like it's recorded just in case you ever need it. But in general, I feel personal also that the Dharma talk is the most effective, not to think about too much, okay, what do I have to take from this, what do I have to remember. It will come very naturally that you remember whatever you need in a certain moment. So this particular Dharma talk, I chose the topic of simplicity. And it's kind of funny, like having a whole like half an hour talk about simplicity, which feels maybe a bit counterintuitive, and I will definitely also try not to make this simple topic complex. But as I thought about this topic, I actually had a lot of insights, a lot of connections to the practice, and why I thought of this topic and why I wanted to share it is because it's actually been a lot in my mind the last month, with especially coming to a place like this, like Ayampe, where there is on many levels a lot going on. But first I noticed on the practice level there's a lot going on the spiritual level. Like almost everyone has some sort of spiritual practice, and beauty of Ayampe is that so many people can also share it and do share it. But for me, when I arrived, it was almost a bit like overwhelming. It's like, oh my God, it's like so much, and what do I have to do? Do I have to do like a plant medicine or like a past trauma healing or talking to my ancestors and like this and that? It felt very complicated for me, this like process of healing. Like, how do I heal? And it's like, okay, like here are these million different ways of healing. So it was almost a bit like, oh wow, like healing got really complicated lately. And then I also thought I felt a lot of like complexity in my personal life, because also our lives in general got very complicated, not only like a practice, like it's like how do we set up our work life, how are our friends circles maintained and managed, how our leisure time, like how is our communication managed? It's all online now, like how many people can we reach, in what way can we reach it? Like it feels all very like complex. And yeah, I feel that's kind of where humans, or like as a whole, we're kind of heading towards this complexity. It's like, how much more can we do? How much more can we heal? How much more can we produce? It's always so much more, and with that, like a lot of complexity arises. And then I was thinking, okay, so I feel like all this complexity is kind of stressing me out. When do I actually feel relaxed and the most happy? And I noticed that these moments are usually very simple moments. Like, for example, when I actually stop and go to the beach in Ayampe and watch the sunset. Like, very simple. Not that the sunset itself is simple, like it looks like there's a lot of stuff going on there, but like the experience itself, it's like as simple as that. You watch and all of a sudden you have this like feeling of contentment. I feel often it gets very complex when we try to get to these experiences and say like, oh, I want to have like a really good day, so I'm going to organize 5 of my friends joining me, then I have to manage they all coming here, I have to manage book a spot on that tour, and so on and so on. That's where it gets complex, when we kind of come into our like human organizing form and like trying to get these moments. Or I thought about, I feel really happy and content when I like really authentically express myself with someone and have like these moments of being able to open myself and just be. And then in contrast, it gets very complicated when I look at social media and say, like, okay, like who am I on social media? How do I express myself? Like, what do I have to present? In what way do I have to present it? Like, who is going to receive it? How are they going to receive it? It gets all very, very complicated. So I was kind of wondering where this complexity is coming from, like why we're all doing this. And it's kind of a very natural human trait, and this is usually when I would hand over to Colin, when sometimes we do like split Dharma talks. He's very good in like technically explaining how we work as humans and what's like actually going on in the brain and so on. So I will simplify that on saying that we have this thing called the default mode network that allows us to be in this beautiful human form, but that basically wants us to always solve problems, or it allows us to solve problems. It's like evolved us so high that we can actually be very solution-based and like figure out complex stuff. But what it also did is it kind of created this need to create problems so we can solve them. So it's kind of this like constant loop. We have to constantly produce something, produce a problem so we can also solve it. Because when we don't have anything to solve, our human brain is kind of a bit unsatisfied. It's like, I want to solve something. I'm smart enough to do it, so what can we solve? Okay, I have to produce something that I can solve, so I need to work or like create some stress for myself, and then I can get myself out of this situation. And what this does on top of it as a society, it kind of produces this society of always doing, always achieving, always what is the next, what next problem can I solve, where can I evolve to, how can I get better, and more and more and more. So Eckhart Tolle wrote that down really nicely, and I want to read that because it kind of sums it up, what's kind of going on with us. He says, "In fact, doing is never enough if you neglect being. We often believe that by doing more and more, you will eventually accumulate enough doings to make yourself feel complete at some point in the future. You won't. You will only lose yourself in doing. The entire civilization is losing itself in doing that is not rooted in being." So that sounds a bit harsh on like whole society and humanity, because in fact it's okay to do. Like we have evolved there, and we got this beautiful thing in our brain that allows us to do this. So there's nothing wrong with us doing stuff. Like we're all here in this human experience, and whatever you believe in why we're here or not, but like somehow there's like an energy or like a purpose, or we feel like we want to do something. So it's not about that doing is bad, but it's about kind of how our attitude evolved around this, and how this doing kind of dominates our being. So this is where mindfulness comes in. So the first step of mindfulness is kind of telling us you don't have to do. You stop doing, you go into observing, meaning you're going into being. So it kind of moves us away from this constant producing, constant doing, constant moving into the direction to like, okay, stop. It's actually enough to just be and to observe. So it's like very simply bringing us to the now, to the present. And I always have to laugh when I like talk to my sister, and like usually in like when we go longer in a conversation, we come to at some point where I say like, oh, you just have to be present. And she's like always like, oh, you're always with your present moment. It's not that simple. It's like, yeah, actually it is, because it's not just something you say like, oh, be present. If you really think about it, it's all we have. There is no past, there is no future. Like if you think of the second ahead, now we're in the second, and it's still like another second ahead. There is no future. The past is also already gone. Like just what I said is already gone. It's just what we have now. So actually this like thought of past and future, that's where the complexity lays. It's like infinite complex. Like what is the future? What is the past? It's like, it's gonna take forever to like really pin this down. But what is the present? It's like right here, right now. So it's like a very, very, very simple, basic practice. And that's what I really appreciated, where I find a lot of gratitude for it, because it's not promising anything. It's not promising you internal bliss. It's not saying if you practice this or that present, it's going to be this or that. It's just you're down here, you stop and you observe. And I feel like, especially with a lot of practices, and this is not to saying that I neglect any other practice. Like I am still doing a lot of other practices too, whether it's movement or energy work or whatever. It all has its place, and in different points of our lives for different people. But I often feel with this amount of spirituality that it's like almost this like competition between spirituality, what is better, and what do I have to do first, like how do I really heal? And I feel mindfulness is just taking or like going away from that, because it's saying like, I'm not better than anything. I'm just telling you this very, very simple truth that your life will be a lot more content and a lot more happy if you're just present, because of what I just said. There is really nothing else. It's just what we have right here. So this is kind of why we're doing retreats like this and creating like an environment like this for you, because we want to take away all this complexity, like all the distractions around all that's going on in your lives, like all the job, all the people that you have to organize around you, because really we're so distracted from the present moment all the time because there is so much going on. And again, like this is without any judgment, it's just like how lives evolve, but it's always like something pulling away our attention, pulling away, and like, oh, and you lose the present moment because you have to think of how to manage that work meeting or how to make peace with your friend or whatever. It's like always pulling you away. So this is why we kind of, in this setting here, creating this bubble for you, and we like talked about this in the very first opening cycle. It's really for you to not have to worry about anything else and directing your energy to the present moment. So you don't even have to worry about cooking your food or like cleaning your room. It's like it's all here. So what happens then? What happens when you have actually this like space of no distractions? So the very simple space is created, but then you go and you stop doing and you just have time for being. And then that's it, no? Our mind, I would almost say unfortunately, but that's a very big judgment. Like our mind is great, and I'm grateful for the way it's working, but it has this quality to it that it gets very nervous when everything is still. So as beautiful as stillness could be and the presence could be, our mind is kind of like, what are we doing now? Like we are in stillness, you don't have any more distractions, you can just sit and meditate, and the mind is like, well, I'm kind of bored, like what do we do now? What comes next? There's a really nice, like there are these little like Zen Buddhist comics, and there is like a young Zen Buddhist sitting to an old Zen Buddhist, and the young one just like kind of decided on this path and came in and was like, okay, like I'm ready to go this way now. And he's like, so what happens next? And the Buddhist monk was like, nothing. And the young one was kind of like, nothing? It's like I just like finished school and all my friends are going off like doing all these things and becoming famous and they're doing work and family, and we do nothing. He's like, next comes nothing. And that can be a very beautiful thought, but usually for the mind it's a very scary thought, because what do we do with nothing? Like the mind is very like used to categorizing everything into this is good, this is bad, this is neutral, and like bad and neutral, that's kind of not what we want, so we want good stuff. So we want to move towards good stuff, and when there's like something else that is not good stuff, we want to move away from it. So the mind kind of wants to move somewhere. But yeah, that's really not how it works. There doesn't always have to be something. Doesn't always have to be something to move towards to, because what you experience in the present is already a lot. So if you really sit down and you get still, and you might have already noticed this in former practice or in this practice here, there's a lot to discover within. So it's not all about where do we actually have to move to or what comes next. It's like, what is already there? What do we find within? And this is kind of where we see that this practice is very, very simple, but it's not easy. On the contrary, it can be a very challenging practice, because once we turn inwards and see what's in there, that's actually where the real juice lies. There's like on like the first levels, we see the breath, we see the body, and then we notice already thoughts coming in, and then these thoughts are linked to emotions, and then there might be fears, there might be past traumas, there might be really dark stuff that we don't even want to look at. And it's very normal to be nervous with that. But the practice slowly kind of teaches you all of this is just the presence, it's just what you're experiencing. So in the end, there's no need really to like judge it too much, to be super afraid of it, to run away from it, because it's there anyways. And I think here lies a lot this like common misconception of the meditation practice, like being something that brings you in like a state of bliss and everything is like blissful and joyful, and that's where you need to be. You need to like shut down your mind and make it all quiet, and that's not what it is at all. And that's what I personally love so much about this very simple practice, because it just gives you what is there, and there's nothing for you to do in a sense of clearing it or like transforming it or like moving it away. This will all happen on its own when that's what the present moment has to offer for you. But most of the time, as also in our normal lives, the present moment offers for you a loud mind that is telling you a lot of things, that is making you think about other stuff that you maybe don't want to think about, that is experiencing you or have you experience emotions that sometimes you can accept very happily and sometimes not. So the simplicity in the practice lays to just be with whatever is, and this is a lot more easy in a setting like this. But you can think of it as it's kind of a training for life. So here it's very easy because you have all this stillness around, so you can look within and slowly understand these processes, whether it's thoughts, whether it's emotions. It's all about just like getting to know them and getting to know yourself. If I have a thought, what is this thought about? Like, how long does it take me to actually notice instead of like getting caught in it? And then what are my following reactions? If you have an emotion like fear, or if you have sadness, what thoughts are coming up? And then are you like clinging to these thoughts? Are you reacting to the sadness like, oh my god, now I'm sad, I don't want to be sad, and then you get even more sad and you get in this whole spiral. And that's all okay in this setting because you have enough stillness to kind of get to notice and accept it. Acceptance is a very big part of this practice that is not like very complicated. It's like, okay, I'm sad, I have to accept that I'm sad, and you will also find the truth that you not always will be sad, because at every moment, the present moment is also changing and evolving. So I really love to see this as it's kind of a life practice or life preparations, because when you're in a situation where there's like a lot of complexity around, a lot of wildness around, and you experience an emotion like sadness, it's often very hard to like deal with it, because you experience it and you don't have the stillness around you to actually see like, oh, it's sadness, I'm sad now and that's okay. And no, it's like, oh, I'm sad, I can't be sad right now, I have like this to do. Or like, oh god, I'm sad, I don't want to be sad in front of this person. You get even more sad, you get like into the spiral and so on. So in this moment, it's very hard to work with that. Once you're practicing and once you're experiencing all of this in your practice, slowly it's going to get easier and easier to actually also apply it in life. So that does not mean that in real life you can never actually work with emotions or work with your thoughts and be mindful there. On the contrary, the mindfulness practice in the stillness slowly gives you this ability automatically without you having to do anything. So you will see, if you're quite new to this practice, that slowly, the more you practice, you actually notice in like everyday life situation, you apply it very automatically and very easily, and you see like, oh, actually that was more like being aware of what I just experienced rather than reacting to it. And this is this very beautiful and strong attribute of this practice, that it's kind of transforming you and healing you without you having to do much. Like, all you have to do basically is not doing and observe and take this time, and then you see how it will unfold. So it's kind of like we also do a lot of breath work. Breath work works the same way. You like train to hold your breath, and within that you just observe what is happening in these different stages of breath hold. And then when you actually have to hold it in real life, Usually when you have no experience at all, immediately your body's like, oh God, I have to breathe, da da da. And when you have trained it before, you have this feeling like, oh, I have to breathe, and then your mind already knows like, oh, I just like experienced this before, and I have observed it before, and I actually know that I don't have to breathe right now, so I can stay calm and I don't have to react to it. And this is how it also works with the practice. So basically the conclusion out of this is that you don't have to remove all the complexity from your life, because like I said, we are here on this earth. We have been given a certain form and maybe a certain task, maybe not, maybe we just roam around, and that's okay too. But it's not always about removing all this complexity and all you're doing from your life. So I feel often this misconception is like, the more spiritual you get, the more practice you have, the more you feel the simplicity. It's all about, okay, I have to give up my job, I have to give everything away to not be attached and live in a cave on a mountain. That's like the classic picture kind of. But you can do that, of course, if you feel that that's the life way. And it's often, I have like times in life where I live very simply, and those are very, very happy times. But then I feel often like called back, because I feel like I want to have a bit more complexity, and I want to teach, and I want to pass something on, and I want to experience the world and all what it has to offer. So it's not about really moving the complexity of the life and living only the simplest life possible. It's all about actually noticing and becoming aware that life is simple and can be simple in every single moment, just by being present, just by stopping from doing and observing and just being. And that's what the practice is. That's the simplicity of the mindfulness practice. So if you want, you can just close your eyes here for a moment and take a breath and just experience the simplicity of the moment. The simplicity of just being.